passionate about it. You can really see that. There's no hiding it.
That's really cool that you're balancing both. And that's actually a really good trick to achieving your dreams and visions.
Coaching was in its own a really, really good feeling that I enjoyed, and it felt like I was doing my passion.
You don't have to be obsessed. That's just what it takes. Hello, friends. Thanks for tuning into another episode on the Success Factor. I'm the host, Trent Christensen. In this episode, I interview Filip Arciszewski. And don't ask me to say that 5 times fast because I will fail on that one. But because it's a Polish last name. Filip and I talked about his profession, his background, his passion for soccer, starting from such a young age at like 5 or 6, and how he's worked his way all the way up to playing college soccer 4 years on a full ride, and how that later led to his passion for coaching soccer. And now he's a tremendous coach for a private club, the Arsenal Soccer Club here in Phoenix, Arizona. He's also a professional in the financial industry. We talked a little bit about that, but overall, we get some insights and wisdom on how Filip has succeeded and how you can succeed by listening to some of his success factors. So without further ado, check out Filip. How old were you when you moved here?
3 or 4. It's pretty young. I can't remember it now.
Okay. That's cool. Do you have any family there still that you go back and see ever? Or?
Yeah. All my family's there pretty much. So anytime we go back, it's, we have to spend 2 weeks just to visit everybody on top of any vacation that we want to do. So it's always a bit of a journey when we go back. Like I said, I only really have a pair of cousins in Chicago, and that's about it for us in the States. So everybody's back home.
That's cool. And where did you go to school? Where did you get your degree?
Yeah. So I moved to Arizona about 15 years ago, and I decided to go to NAU. After hanging up the boots, I was thinking about going to play D2 at a couple of schools, but I just had some knee issues and back issues and future surgeries. So I figured I wasn't cut out for it. I went to NAU just because it was far, but close to home, and I got a full ride there. Didn't really believe in paying for school at that point. So, went to NAU, spent 4 years there, and that's actually where I started coaching for the first time. And that's where I really got into it.
And how old were you when you really got into soccer? Like when did your parents kind of get you into it, or when did you gravitate towards it and really like it?
Yeah, I remember I was always a soccer fan from, the day I can remember being a kid, right? So I remember my dad watching it on TV, and I'd always be interested in it, and it just kind of took off from there. I was probably 5 or 6 when I first saw it on TV, and it became a routine of, every Saturday, instead of waking up and watching cartoons, I would be putting Premier League on and watching, the Arsenal Invincibles play and some of those battles with United. And that really got me into it. So I'm an Arsenal fan just from growing up watching them. But for me, it was watch soccer in the morning, go play soccer outside in the afternoon, and then come home and watch more of it or play FIFA, something like that. So
that's cool.
It's nothing too complicated, but it was something I've always done from just the very beginning. It's always been a passion that I had pretty much since birth. So
that's cool. And so after college, you picked up coaching. Like now, years later, who all are you coaching now? How many teams do you have? And what's your, I don't know, how old? Kind of give me a rundown of that.
Yeah, so it actually started in college. It was my senior year of college where I was looking to get out of a crappy restaurant job that I was sick of, and one of my friends coached for Flagstaff United. It was the only really club that they had up there. So I went out, I ran a training session, and the kids just loved me, and I loved being with the kids. So I took on 2 4v4 teams, boys and girls, and that was sort of my kickoff from there. And I realized, I missed the feeling of playing, and it wasn't something you can always recreate, but coaching was in its own a really, really good feeling that I enjoyed, and it felt like I was doing my passion. So from there, I moved down here to, after I graduated college, I moved down to Scottsdale. I had a job that was making me work ludicrous hours till about 8 p.m. So I didn't coach my first year. And I had a bit of a falling out at work one day, and I got sick and fed up and tired of being in a call center. And I reached out to 8 or 9 different clubs in Arizona. Every single one didn't respond or didn't answer or told me no, besides Arsenal. So I drove out to Mesa to meet the director, David. And when I walk up to him, he says, shit, you look familiar. I remember you. You're a good kid. Because I coincidentally played against his team, his 96 team, when I was playing. So he remembered me, gave me a chance as an assistant, and I was your son's assistant for my first year at Arsenal when they were playing 7v7. So I had that team and another 2005 H team, I believe. And ever since then, it's sort of just snowballed into what it is now, where I've got Yeah, I had about 2013, 2014, so U9, U10 boys, and then I have the 2010s, which are U13. And just recently, I was added to the UPSL staff at Arsenal. So that's, I would say, like the fourth division. It's like semi-pro soccer in the United States, two divisions behind like what Phoenix Rising would be at. So it's slowly coming together, moving my way up the food chain, but definitely every year is a little bit a bigger of a challenge, and it gets more and more important to start playing the right way and making sure training sessions are great. It's a long way from what kind of games can we play with the kids today.
Yeah, totally. The sport has completely changed. I mean, it seems like these even these 2010s, it seems like we treat it like semi-pro and, everyone's so invested and even the kids are get really excited. Like Cade, he wants to go home and practice and he wants like a bounce back net, he wants all the gear and he wants to just keep improving his skill. And it's funny, man. Like when I was that age, I didn't have that sophistication. It was just going out and playing for AYSO,
Yep.
and, hurry up and throw your shin guards on, grab your ball and run. Maybe you forgot water, maybe you brought it, who knows? But then you come home and you're off riding bikes or playing kick the can in the street or something. But now the
Yep.
kids like take it serious and they're really training.
Yeah, I think that the sport's definitely evolved. I do miss the fact or the aspect of when you were a kid, it was that easy where you just pick up a ball, shin guards, go to practice. Now you look and you have state of the art facilities, you have speed and conditioning and a fitness facility. You're traveling all the time. Every game matters. Parents are getting more and more invested. And as gets older, it's only going to get more and more serious, right? You start getting into high school. You want to talk about team placements. Then you think about whether you want to make a travel team and college and scouts. So it just gets more serious. But I definitely think the sport has taken an uptick. I think, 20 years ago when you probably played or when I was playing, it was definitely the fourth or fifth most popular sport in America. But now people are realizing like, holy cow, soccer can get you far away. You can get really good scholarships for it. I've noticed a lot of parents kind of bring that up, and it's starting to dominate. It's a global sport, and it's finally seeping into America, and people are taking it really, really seriously because there's some really good opportunities that you can make of it. So it's cool on one hand, but it also you don't want to lose the fun of it. You don't want it to be too commercialized or too corporate or too difficult to be able to participate. I think one of the main problems with soccer now is in America it's so expensive, crazy expensive. I see some of the fees that you guys pay every year, and it's like unless you're doing pretty well for yourself, it's really a struggle to play for clubs or pay for club soccer now. So I think we have to do a better job of finding a nice balance between the two because as it kind of progresses forward, you're just going to see fees and things like that just spike in price. And at some point, the really good players are going to be priced out of it. And that's unfortunate.
Yeah, it is unfortunate. It's like the industry needs some kind of like sponsorship program or some kind of scholarship program where you can even have a nonprofit support those kids that are very skilled and talented, but just don't have the financial backing from the family for a variety of reasons. Like, so, there's probably a lot of different programs you could put in place there. Um, that's interesting. So you made me think of a couple different things, but I guess my first question is my first thought is I want to point out the fact that you illustrated a success factor in your life. So you were frustrated with the call center. You were frustrated with what you're doing, your passions in soccer. You took the effort to go and reach out to 6 clubs or 9 or whatever you said,
But there's a lot.
a lot. And because that decision is a pivotal moment in anyone's journey in life, because if you don't do those actions, you don't put forth those decisions and put them into work and just do something about what you want to have changed, nothing changes. You'll just still be sitting there at the call center. And so that's really cool. And you're also going after higher division teams and elevating yourself and taking those roles and responsibilities that are increasing your skill set as a coach. That's cool. Those are also really important factors too. Now, you also work full time, right? So what do you do professionally?
I work for a company called CloudMed. So what I do is I'm a business analyst. My job day to day is I work from home. I log in and I kind of ranges anywhere from supporting our website or websites that we use to sending documentation or files out to hospitals. Just to kind of summarize what we do, we basically help hospitals make money from insurance companies. So in the hospital industry, there's like a 5% cutoff where hospitals aren't accruing revenue or they're mislabeling or misreporting things, especially like patient records. And so that 5% companies like Cloud Med, we come in, we look at patient records. We have all these different type of scripts that we can run to pull out records. And so, for example, if you go in for a 3-inch laceration, let's say you cut yourself 3 inches deep, you get stitched, maybe that's like $3,000 of a bill. Obviously, insurance pays a part, et cetera, et cetera. What we do is we have auditors that went to college and trained to review cases that where they could deem there might be a mistake or where there could be an edit. And they'll say, "Hey, doc, can you check this out? This sounds like it might have been a deeper than 3-inch laceration." Doctor will look at his notes. He accidentally put 3 inches instead of 5 inches, and that's $2,000 difference with insurance. So, let's say instead of three, hospital makes five, so that $2,000 profit, we get a cut of that, and that's kind of just like a really broad overview of what we do. I'm more on the support side of it, so we have multiple sites that our auditors use that we have to maintain. We send out reporting to clients, things like that. So it's a bit all encompassing. Business analyst is a vague term, but we do a whole sort of scope of practice. But that's sort of the company in a nutshell, and what I do basically on a day to day.
Yeah, that's a lot. It sounds like you do something very similar to what I do. I work in the internal audit industry for a financial institution and been in internal audit for a long time. But everything you described, from your checks, your balances, you're following up to see if something's correct. It's almost like what we do with controls, right? We go and audit controls
Hmm.
and see if they're operating effectively and risk rate them and determine what the risk environment is across all the different aspects of the bank. And it sounds like you should consider switching to auditing.
I mean, I do have a finance major, and I originally went to work in the finance industry, but I really like the sort of work from home tech scene. It's been ideal for me.
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of perks to that type of a setup. I work from home too full time, so there's a lot of perks there. I do miss the interactions. I get that occasionally when I go to the offices or travel, but um, yeah, it has a lot of like, for example, you probably couldn't even coach the teams that you do if you had to go and commute an hour to the office each day one way. I mean, it would set you back. It's just difficult to do things like that.
Yeah, and part of the reason why I took the job and I've stayed at the company for so long, don't get me wrong, I love the company, I love the job, but the flexibility does make coaching work. I used to work at a job where I had to clock in and clock out at a certain time, and that definitely affected coaching. And so I sort of made the decision that, I'm comfortable in this position, and I'm probably not pushing myself or pursuing more success in my, professional career, because I want to try to push and grow in my coaching career. Ultimately, that's my passion and what I really love doing on a day to day. And I think if I can take that as far as I can go, I'm going to take advantage of it. So I don't want to say I'm using my job as a vessel, but it definitely helps keep me afloat while I try to pursue my dream, essentially with the coaching. And at some point, I want to hope that the coaching overlaps the day job, and I can quit that and coach full time.
Oh, you're doing it totally right. That's the best way to do it. You don't want to jump in, the deep end and quit your job and switch because could take you years and years to ramp up to the level of
Yeah.
income that you need to actually survive. That's really cool that you're balancing both. And that's actually a really good trick to achieving your dreams and visions. See how you can balance and get something going, build the momentum with your passion and just work your way on it. Speaking of which, your coaching style, I want to ask you about it. So
Sure.
I've noticed your coaching style for probably 3 years now. I think I've observed
I think about
two,
3 or 4. Yeah.
3 or 4. So one thing I've noticed is you have a unique style. I like you know when to yell and get fierce, and you're selective on when to do it. And it's spot on. And the kids can appreciate that. Okay. Yeah. Done screwed up. All right. Coach called me out on it. Instead of like, some coaches just yell all the time, swear all the time, put down the kids. I hear that from other clubs too. So what's your philosophy? What's your kind of approach to the overall coaching that you do?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's something I think that's a little bit of the person that you are, and a little bit something what you can learn and be trained to do. So, I always say I wear my heart on my sleeve, and I'm very, very open and animated. When I played soccer, I played the six, so I was a holding mid or a center back. I usually say holding midfield is the position that makes the best coaches. And if you look at like the professionals, right, you've got Pep Guardiola, he played holding mid, Arteta, etc. It's just a position where you see the field and you really have to communicate and be the vocalist of the team. So I've always had that sort of like nature of being able to read the game, know when to yell, know when to tell somebody what to do, where to step in. But I've got to give credit to a few autobiographies I read, especially the Sir Alex Ferguson book. So Alex is probably, I know he coached United. I hate United, but I probably look up to him the most, along with a few others. And in his autobiography, I used to always think that, my way is the way. Or there's no, it's my way or the highway. And I used to always be a screamer and a shouter, and I didn't have that fine balance. But after reading his autobiography, there's a part that I really remember, and it was after Eric Cantona kicked a fan in the crowd. And I think he had a 10-match ban or something crazy like that. You can't do that. And so you go into the locker room, Sir Alex walks in, and everybody was expecting him to just lose it with Cantona. But what does he do? He goes and he puts his arm around him and he says, "It's okay. It's going to be all right. Don't worry." While other players, he'll throw shoes at them, he'll scream at their faces, and he'll yell. And so I remember this part vividly where he said, every player is a little different and you have to know how to interact with them. And, it's not always perfect at first, but when you take over a team, you have to get to know these kids, get to know the players, and you have to know your boundaries and limits. So with the Cades group, for example, they're 13. There's moments where I'm going to yell and be dramatic and kind of peacock just so they get attention and they all see this is something you should or shouldn't do. Where I think I've gotten better and where I want to continue to improve is, can you pull somebody aside and have that quiet word with them? Can you step in and say, "Hey, that's all right to make that mistake?" And it all comes down to what you want to teach. So when it comes to, criticizing mistakes, for example, if you want to play an attacking one type of style, you shouldn't be criticizing if somebody's trying to play a through ball or taking a player on. Yes, there's parts of the field where it's preferred. There's times where you want to do it versus others, but if that's what you're trying to teach, then you need to promote that and you need to give them credit for it, right? There's certain things, certain rules that you don't want to break. And with the boys, I always say we have a few standards that you've got to follow. And so those standards aren't met, they know. And that's when my animated side comes out. So um, it's a fine line. And I think it has to do with the personality of a person. For some reason, I just naturally get along with kids and teenagers, and I just have a good mesh of how to interact with them. Whereas I know a lot of coaches that I work with, they come up and they say, "I don't know how you coach 7-year-olds. I don't know how you can deal with a 10-year-old. It gets so awkward. I don't know what to say." That part I just feel like I was born with, and it might have to do with the fact that I raised my brother from when I was 10 years old, and I have a good understanding of what kids are like. But I think a little bit is that natural connection. I think the other part is, I'm passionate about it. You can really see that, and there's no hiding it. I can't stand a boring coach who just sits there and looks uninterested or is on his phone during the game and just says, "Yeah, yeah, like go in and play this position." To me, that just kills the fun of the game. And I coach, and I remember the good parts of my coaches as well. I remember the fun animation, the running and screaming onto the field that makes the game fun. And I remember being yelled at, and it makes an impression. So there's definitely lines that have to be drawn, and sometimes I've crossed those lines. And you just have to apologize and try to move on. So there's always a fine line, especially when it comes to shouting and motivating. But I've got to give some credit to some of those motivational movies that we watch, like Miracle, for example, or some of these autobiographies. I always try to take a little bit from each one, but I mean, ultimately, it's really you and who you are. If you're a quiet person, I always say you can't pretend to be a shouter or a screamer. It's faux pas. Like, people won't believe it on the pitch. But if you're a shouter and a yeller and you're trying to be quiet and uninterested, again, it doesn't work that way. So you have to find the best balance for you. And to me, I think I've slowly started to master it. And the reason I want to keep pushing myself and getting older teams, college age level, things like that, is it's a whole different interaction. It's not just a different type of training style. It's a whole different interaction. I'd probably have no business yelling or shouting at a 25-year-old who plays D1 or semi-professional, like I do with a 13-year-old who's just learning how to kick the ball with his left foot. So it's a very different, ball game at that point. And you're always constantly learning. It's basically like management, but with younger ages, right? So, to me, it's a bit of an art. I love the managing side just as much as I love the tactical side. If anything, I love reading and brushing up on the skills of a soccer manager more than anything, because it translates to real life. But there really are some good kind of bits and pieces of nuggets that you can read up on successful managers. And I love to always take those back with me and try to improve.
Yeah, that's really cool. You just said a lot, and that's a lot to digest, but those are really good principles, because there's no perfect way, and you can't actually expect especially when you're first starting off doing anything in life, to get it right the first time. It takes time. And there was a study done, like, I think it was like New York Times or Wall Street Journal. They did a study and said, in order to become classified as like a subject matter expert or a professional, you need to put in at
Mhm.
least like 10,000 hours. And so,
Yeah.
you know, if anything you're doing right now, right, add up how many hours you're putting into it and see how long it takes you to get to the 10,000 hours. I had this conversation with Kate actually, and he's like, okay, so I need to work on the ball an hour and 20 minutes a day to hit that by the time I graduate. And hopefully I'll be a pro and I can get recruited. I was laughing.
But
um,
see, that's the right attitude to have, though. That's the right attitude, and that's exactly what you want. Is it may not be possible or feasible, but you want to have that mindset for it.
yeah. Well, that brings up my next point too. What does it take? So think about your teams, think about the 2010s, the 13-year-olds, Kate's team, or even any other team. What does it take to, in your eyes, for one of those kids to end up playing pro? What would they need to do today to shift their either style, approach, investment into their skill to structure them so they have a higher probability of getting recruited?
That's a good question. And that's, I think it's getting tougher and tougher to get into that space because the amount of soccer players there are now is tremendous. And the amount of money that's being thrown at this, you look at like private facilities, private trainings, um, travel teams, academies being formed. So there's really just a whole slew of reasons. But to me, I mean, apart from just natural born talent, I think you have to be obsessed with it. And I don't think enough kids are obsessed with the sport. And that's probably why I've been so heavy on teaching my kids this year on how to do things outside of practice. Because when I played, I mean, if there was any free time, if it's an off day on practice, if it's before or after practice, I'd be shooting, I'd be working on, juggling, I'd be kicking a tennis ball at a wall. I'd be obsessed with it. Injuries and, I just wasn't born with that much talent. I don't think kind of permitted me from moving on to the top level. And I think I read that early on. But then you just have to be obsessed with it and you have to dive in. That hour and a half that Kate mentioned, that's for some kids, that's an hour and a half easy a day. That's not difficult. In addition to other stuff, to some kids that can be 3 or 4 hours a day. And I think you need to have that obsession, and it can't just be obsession watching or playing video games. It has to be you outside on good old fashioned concrete, playing with your friends, getting kicks and bruises and just learning that way. And I don't think I shouldn't say anybody, I don't think many people are as obsessed as, they once were. And that's where you're going to see the big discrepancy. So I think the players that I see that go through are obsessed. I can talk to them about soccer. They can talk to me tactically. They know everything and anything. There's a few who don't, right? And they're just natural freaks of talent. But I think it's obsession if I had to narrow it down to one word.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And if you're not obsessed, then that's okay. I mean, you don't have to be obsessed. That's just what it takes. And there are plenty of people that are obsessed and they will go on and continue that obsession.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's a great point. Not everybody's going to be a D1 player. Not everybody's going to make MLS or the Premier League or this and that. And that's fine because at the end of the day, you're playing a game to have fun and, take that as far as you want to, whether it's you want to cut off at fourth grade and start playing basketball, whether that's high school, you decide to change your path, whether that's college because you get picked up by a big school. If the game still brings you enjoyment, there's other avenues towards it. And that's why I took up coaching because the game was what I loved. And whether I could play or not was always a dream. But, if I can't, coaching's that next kind of fulfillment in my life with soccer. I used to be a referee as well. And I always joke that I bleed the game dry for money because everything I do, I try to do around soccer. And, not everybody has to do it to make D1. And I know a lot of parents want that nowadays with expectations and the unrealism of it, but take it, make it fun, enjoy it as much as you want to. If you want to pursue other sports, that's great. There's never a pressure to have to move on and be the next best thing in soccer.
Yeah, that's really cool. I appreciate that you said that because that is a valid point. And I think that, any of the kids listening or any young kids that are still in the sport and they may be feeling pressure to keep playing or whatever, I mean, that's okay. Just talk about it, be real with it. Yeah. And try other sports, try other things, play with your friends, different, kick any ball around, go throw any kind of ball around, go figure out what the options are in life. I mean, there's so many other things you can do in life. Just being active is the best way for kids to have the most optimal physiological future if they're just
Oh yeah.
doing something, right? One more question for you. Um, how do you define success?
How do I define
Yeah, like
success?
in your life, what does that mean to you?
I look at success as like a ladder. So to me, success is something you want to strive to aim for. You want to make it realistic to be able to hit, but something that you can build upon. So, for me, I look at success as how could I be successful this season? Well, maybe we win a tournament. Great. Is that reachable? Is that possible? Yes. Can you get it? You get it. Next ladder. What's the next ladder that we can do? Can we win another tournament? Can you win your league? Can you just improve the players on your team? I think it all has to go and boil down to the situation and the environment that you're in. For example, just to relate it to coaching, if you're working with a group of maybe fifth tier players, that's not realistic to win state, but can you improve them? Can you make them have fun? Can you have them understand the game? That might be a success. Whereas if you're on a top team, maybe just having fun isn't enough, and success is winning a few tournaments or winning a league or maybe getting a few kids to college. So I think it's all relevant. But I think ultimately it is a ladder and you can't be satisfied by hitting the first step. I think you should have a feeling of you've hit it and you're proud of yourself. But I'm always thinking, what's the next challenge? What's that next step that I can take? And that's why the ladder example is perfect, because then you can reach for that next ledge. Maybe you don't get it. Maybe you have to work for it a little more. But success is just that, I think, temporary feeling of, hey, you did a good job, pat on the back. Now what's next? At least that's the way it is for me. And I know that might not always be super healthy. So
Hey, if it works for you, that's all that matters, right? You do you.
yep.
And that's you. That's why I ask all my guests that question, because I want to know kind of what makes them tick, what their motivations are, because they're so unique. Every single person has had a different response. I'm so fascinated by that, because when I was a kid, I always thought success meant bling, bling, money, cars, houses, all that crap. Right. And only like one person out of 55 interviews or 58 interviews I've done has actually said straight up cash. I want to become a billionaire.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. It's very interesting. What does your morning routine look like? You seem like you're a very disciplined person and you have very much a structured day, because your responses are in such a way that it comes across as being a very good discipline to your overall life and structure of your time management. Am I accurate on that?
You are. Yeah. I think I have so much going on. I need to be structured. I have that mindset of I always have to worry about something. So am I worried about, how I feel physically this week? Am I worried about how much money I've spent? Am I worried about this? So to me, I have to have a routine. And every morning I wake up, usually 6:30, start work. I'll have, the same breakfast. It's, eggs, spinach and mushrooms, or a bowl of oatmeal. And I'll have one of, 5 different types of lunches every week. And my meals are structured and I prepare them. And it's kind of just, work from 7:30 to 4 or 3:30. Have my lunch and my breakfast at the same time, ride a bike, go on a walk, and then go to practice from 5 to 7:30 or 9 p.m. And then if I have time, squeeze in the gym at the end of the day. But you'd be surprised. I mean, that's my pretty much my Monday through Thursday every week from August to May. And then weekends are kind of a toss up, whether I have to be on the field all weekend or whether I actually have time for friends. I usually have a lot of making up to do because I'm never around during the weekends.
Yeah. I was going to say, how do you socialize? I mean, how do you squeeze in time with friends and buddies and meet people?
It's difficult. I'm not making too many new friends nowadays, but I have 2 roommates right now. I live with my friends from college, and that helps a lot because I get to see them on my downtime. I've luckily had a girlfriend before coaching started. I don't know if that'd be possible after coaching started.
Yeah.
And then, whenever I can, I try to squeeze in, an event. The hard thing for me is, if I'm out in the sun getting baked all day and just roasting, the last thing I want to do is go out to a social event at 7 or 8 p.m. at night. But sometimes you just have to suck it up and say, all right, I'll go have a drink and I'll hang out, because ultimately I'm going to be alone if I keep pursuing that. But it's definitely getting harder as I get older. I mean, staying up late, and I feel like such an old man saying that. So,
You're
yeah,
not
I mean,
even
it's a
that old.
balance.
How old are you? 27?
Yeah, 27.
That was a good guess, actually.
That was a
Yeah.
good guess.
Yeah. And you're single, you're an eligible bachelor. So all the honeys out there in the Phoenix area, go hit up Coach Philip.
No, 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 no. I have a girlfriend,
Oh,
thankfully,
okay.
so I
Never
don't have to
mind.
worry about that.
Edit that out. Philip's taken. Sorry, honeys. He's already a, called for a soccer coach slash, finance professional.
Yep. No more time for women.
So does she complain about your availability, or is
Oh yeah.
she
Oh yeah.
understanding?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. Not in like a bad sense, but almost jokingly, like, how much time do I have this weekend allotted or things like that. So I have to do my best to teeter that line to make sure she gets enough time for me.
How come you don't have her come to the games and have her spend time with you on the bench?
I do sometimes. The issue is I'm usually out there not just for one, but for 4, 5, 6 games or 4, 5, 6 hours. And I wouldn't wish that upon anybody if it's, if you're not coaching. So it's I mean, it can get tiring. I'm invested because it's my teams, and but I wouldn't imagine somebody coming in just watching for that amount of time, especially when it's so hot outside.
Yeah, seriously. And I can partially relate to that because when you have 2 kids at Arsenal on 2 different teams with back-to-back games or scattered throughout the
Yep.
day, and you got 2 tournaments going or 2 teams playing in the same tournament, you got what happens is 8 different game times that weekend,
Yep.
potentially 9 or 10, and usually about 4 or 5 locations. Sometimes
Yep.
one kid's on one location of the valley and another game's on the other location of the valley. Try managing all that. And so I totally get what you mean because sitting on those fields that many hours a weekend, yeah, it gets to you.
Yeah. It's fun, but it is draining.
But it is fun to watch the games. I like
Yeah.
watching the games. It's more engaging. So thank you, Philip. Appreciate you coming on. I am super glad we could pull up and do this. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. It was my pleasure.